Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Today I'm going to do another book review. I recently read Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. This is another great book. I've read this book in a couple of days. It's an easy, quick read. It's well written. He's one of the greatest writers of our time right now. And his writing is just like poetry. It's excellent. So I highly recommend this book. It's, reader friendly. It's a book that you can breeze through in a couple of days. And it's a real substantive book. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some of the points that are highlighted in this book. And basically, this book is addressed to his son. He's basically writing an open letter to his son, letting him know about the struggle of Black people and about the need to continue to struggle, and how through struggle one really learns to appreciate life, and one really just learns about what it means to be an African American and a Black man in America. But in this book, he talks about a wide range of his experiences. He talks about growing up in Baltimore, Maryland, about just the struggles of being a Black man in an urban environment, and about fear. Fear is a big theme in this book. He talks about how fear motivates people to do what they need to do to survive. It teaches you the rules of the street, because without a knowledge of those rules, you succumb to the streets. You become a victim of the streets. And he talks about being on guard, maintaining that survival mentality, not only in the streets, but in life in general, surviving as a Black man. Throughout his book, he talks about this idea of the dream and the dreamers. And basically, this dream is based on American mythology about exceptionalism. It involves a perception of the world that's glossed over, a false perception of the world, a false perception of American history, a perception that glosses over the brutality of American history, a perception that glosses over the enslavement of African people, that just brushes that aside as if it's not even a major significant factor in this country. A dream that glosses over the extermination of the Native American people, a dream that paints a glorified, distorted sense of American history and reality, a dream that ignores the reality of racial oppression in this country, a dream that peddles the myth that anyone who works hard can achieve the American dream. These lies that are peddled, this propaganda that has deceived the people. And when I read about him, referring to this dream and to the dreamers, all I could think about was the movie The Matrix, and how people were living in a false world. They were living in the Matrix. What they perceived did not exist. It was a made up world to perpetuate a system of oppression. And that's essentially what he's talking about here when he talks about this dream of whiteness, this dream of the concept of whiteness. And I just want to talk about a couple of points that he raises. He talks about how this system basically needs what it considers to be niggers. It needs them because without them, it would not be able to maintain itself. It maintains its existence by telling white people that they are somehow privileged, that they are somehow better than everybody else. that no matter how poor or downtrodden they are, that they are still better than those black people. So that notion of white superiority unites the poor whites, the working class whites, the middle class whites, and the aristocrats around one central idea, and that's the myth of white supremacy. And that it is that myth that allows these poor white people to support a party like the Republican Party, a party that's geared towards the aristocracy in this country, the power elite. It is that sense of whiteness that makes even the most downtrodden white person feel superior to any black person. And it's that notion of white supremacy that prevents the working people from realizing that they too are oppressed. It is that sense of entitlement, that sense of whiteness that prevents the poor white person from realizing that the system is oppressing them as well. Now, throughout his book, he talks about black body. He refers to the black body. He talks about how there's risk to the black body, police brutality and inner city violence and all these things. And he constantly refers to black bodies. I think our oppression is larger than an issue of the physical body. It's about the totality of the human being, of the African American, about the total oppression of blackness, of black people. It's not about just our bodies, it's about our minds and our souls as well. And that brings me to another point as well. Throughout his book, he talks about how he's an atheist. Essentially, that's what he's saying. He's saying that he wasn't reared to believe in Christianity. He wasn't reared to believe in any faith. And I find that atheism seems to be more popular nowadays, especially among, I guess, middle-aged people and young people. Nowadays, it seems like it's gained a lot of popularity, especially in circles where people claim that they have knowledge, they claim that they're conscious. But as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have a knowledge of God, if you don't have a belief in God and something divine, something beyond this physical world, you are missing the whole point of human existence. You are missing the whole point of why we are here on earth. You're missing the point, the purpose of our lives. And you can't truly be conscious without a link to the divine. Our ancestors were people of spirit, people who believed in the divine. And we have lost touch with that. And it's a shame. I understand that sometimes religion can be used to exploit people, to oppress people. And I understand that that's been the history of religion. But religion can also be used to uplift people, to inspire people, to encourage people to continue to persevere in the face of the worst of conditions. And that's what religion has helped the African in America do. It helped us persevere during the dark time periods of slavery, during the times when we first faced great odds during the civil rights movement, when we faced the cannons and, the water cannons, the dogs, the Klan, the police. When we faced all that brutality and oppression, it is our faith that got us through. It is our faith that has allowed us to be a great people. It is our faith that has brought us from the slave house to the White House, from the cotton fields to the halls of Congress, to the halls of city halls around this country. So faith is important, and I just think that That's part of what was missing from this book, and I understand that it's his story, but without a faith in God, you're missing a big part of the picture. You're missing a major component of what it means to be a human being. Now, throughout this book, he talks about like just the reality of America. Like, he talks about like the African American experience. He talked about so many cases of police brutality and just white vigilantism. He talked about Jordan Davis, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray. And he actually talked about a case of brutality in Prince George's County involving Prince Jones. He talked about how he actually knew Prince Jones and he was killed by the Prince George's County police. And the thing that's so disturbing about that story is the fact that this man's mother managed to get out of poverty and become a distinguished doctor. And she managed to provide her family with the best of things: good education, great neighborhood, all of those things. But despite all of that, there was no protection from police brutality. That didn't protect the family from police brutality. It didn't protect Prince Jones from being killed by the police. Despite his education, despite his status in life, he was still just another black man who was not safe in this society. And one thing that really stood out in this book is when he was talking about, when Coates was talking about his son reacting to the decision not to indict Darren Wilson for killing Michael Brown. He talked about how his son left the room and said he had to go, and his son was crying. And Coates wanted to comfort his son, but he realized that he had to let his son experience the painful experience of being black in America. He couldn't tell him everything was going to be okay, because it's not necessarily going to be okay for a black man in this country. So that was one of the high points in the book. So I highly recommend this book. I really do recommend it. And I just want to talk about a couple of other points before I go. And one of those points is his experience at Howard. He talks about how when he was at Howard, how great that experience was, how great it was to meet so many different types of people from all over the country and all over the world. And he talked about his process of political education, how he began to gain knowledge of self and knowledge of the world around him. And when I heard his story about his experience at Howard, it reminded me of my experience. And as I posted on Facebook, my experience at Howard was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life, one of the greatest time periods of my life. It was one of the most exciting time periods of my life. It was a point where I was gaining knowledge of myself. He talked about how he studied in the Moreland Springer library. And I remember days when I would study there. In addition to like learning, what I needed to learn to get good grades in my classes and stuff, I also took time to study about my people, to educate myself. It was there where I discovered my passion for social justice, my passion and love for my people. It was there I learned to love my people. I got a sense of black pride that I couldn't get anywhere else. Because here you have an environment of excellence. You don't have an environment of thugism, of hooliganism. You have an environment where people are striving for excellence. But those are just some of the highlights of this book. I highly recommend that you all read it. It is a great read. It's well written, it's poetic. It's a beautiful book.